This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 819 of Horse Tip Daily. A different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you, one day at a time. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today's tip is from Julie Slater. Julie grew up in Germany, where she took dressage and jumping lessons, like most other horse-crazy kids in her neighborhood. But when she came to the United States as an adult, she discovered ranch work and has been working for ranches and helping others improve their riding skills ever since. Today, Julie offers some great advice on stopping and managing expectations. And we'll get right to our tip after this message from IPHDA. The International Performance Horse Development Association, or IPHDA, is an online horse association providing its members educational opportunities and virtual horse shows in a wide range of classes, from ranch work to reining to barrel racing. IPHDA even offers in-hand classes, so there's something for everyone. It's easy and fun to enter classes, too. No long drives to the horse show grounds, no hotels, no scrambling to schedule sitters while you're away. Members simply sign up for classes and submit their video according to the class's specifications. Like a live horse show, you'll compete with others, get judges' feedback, and win prizes. You can learn more at internethorseshow.com. That's internethorseshow.com.
All this is a tip about shopping for a general using horse. First of all, the things that you don't want to expect from your general using horse in a stop. So, but what you don't want to expect from a general using horse is you don't want to look at the reiner stops and say, oh yeah, I wish my horse would stop like that. Because it's not going to happen. Number one, the reiners have manicured ground. It is, a certain amount deep, and there's a base underneath, and these horses can have special shoes. And you cannot, if you've got your barefoot little backyard horse, there's just no way in the world that you're ever going to develop a reiner type slide. So you put that out of your head. Instead, focus on what you can expect from your horse. So the things that you can expect from your horse is you can expect an obedient shutdown of motion. Now, you do want that to be on the hind end, and you want your horse to go ahead and use his hind end. But again, if you're going to go ahead and take your horse out into a pasture or into a trail site type setting, and you're going to go 9-0, and then you're going to go ahead and want him to shut all that motion down within the next stride or two, you are going to set your horse up for failure. So don't do that. If you're going to go, your stop is pretty much on your general using horse, your stop is speed related. We want to have a shutdown of motion, and we want to have it as fast as possible. If it takes your horse 3 strides to do this, and he does it in balance, and he does it well, then that is a success. That is not a failure. If you are going to go 9-0 and then decide to shut down all motion, and you want him to do this in 1 stride, then you're going to have to be prepared for your horse to slide and to have a little bit of give everywhere that he goes, because, logically and physically, with physical motion, he cannot do that without introducing a little bit of slide. So you're going to have to go ahead and have some parameters of what you want your horse to do. Now, let's go back to your general using horse. If we are at a walk and you say whoa, and it takes your horse 3 strides to whoa out of a walk, then that's a miss. That's not a stop. That's a slowdown.
That's a drift to a halt whenever I get around to it.
To a halt, and hopefully everybody's going to 4 feet are on the ground, maybe. Okay, maybe you now? Yeah, all right, yeah. No, that's a miss. You are at a walk, and you say, whoa. Your horse needs to shut it down, and yesterday. And you need to have those kind of expectations there for your horse. Because I know I'm one of those trainers that really I remember pretty much every stage of learning that I was in at one point or another. I remember being a new horse owner, and I remember learning to ride, and I remember some of the mistakes that I made as I went through my training process and learning how to train. And this is one of the things that came in. Well, she wasn't ready, or she wasn't paying attention, or she wasn't doing this, or she wasn't doing that, or she wasn't balanced. No, you're at a walk. You're a nice, fast, solid walk. You want your horse to stop. It does not take any physical bending over backwards for your horse to shut it down in less than one stride out of a walk. When you say whoa and you put the rein actions and all that into motion, she can shut it down now. So those are some things that you need to get clear in your mind. Because I find that my clients, my students, they don't really have that clear in their mind. And so they will let their horses be as unclear in their stops as they are in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go on to a trot. And again, even if your horse is a fast spanking trot, there's not anything that as a complete whoa out of the fast spanking trot is not something that he cannot perform. He is fine. So if you are going to be trotting at a fairly good speed and you decide to shut her down and to put the whoa on, this is the time when we're going to start worrying about where that stop is coming from. It's got to come from the hind end. Out of the walk, it's really hard to tell whether your horse is using his hind end or not, because there's just a lot of, there's just 4 feet that are doing the propulsion type motion and the rock of the stop. It's a little harder to tell where, how your horse is going to stop. But out of the trot, it's very easy even for a novice horse person to tell whether or not your horse is going to stop from the hind end.
And what is that? Help.
Sorry, help.
Help. What would I be looking for? I'm Joe the novice who's never ridden a reining horse, but I certainly know what they look like, and I think it's really cool. What might be a couple of things that I'm going to look for, feel for, because I'm sitting on the horse, that are going to indicate to me that we are getting some semblance of that correct stop coming from the hind end from the trot? Just a couple, because I know there's lots, but a couple of them.
The really most obvious thing, and the hardest thing to finally get to leave, the most obvious thing is if your horse is not using his hind end, he's going to be using his front end. If he's going to be using his front end, he's also going to be using his head and neck. So if your horse is moseying along at a trot and you're asking for a whoa, and the first reaction you get out of your horse is he's going to jack his head up in the air, you can pretty much bet that he's not using his hind end. Because if he's not using his hind end, he's going to be using his front. If you are not sure whether or not your horse is using his hind end, look at his head. If he's jacking that head up in the air when he wants to stop, then he's not using his hind end. So how do you get him to quit using? How do you get him to start using the hind end? And we're just talking about a stop from a trot, okay?
Got it.
So I have actually started doing something different. You stop and you turn right away. Stop, go a different direction. You don't want to stop and go forward after the stop. You can stop, and if your horse even stops, even if he just does what you tell him to do, whether it is a correct stop or an incorrect stop, if you are at a spanking trot and you say whoa, and the next step says 4 feet of his are on the ground, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Pet him, say, that's a good thing. Thank you. You did what I asked you to do. But then instead of getting that forward motion introduced again and, the front end working again, get that hind end to working by turning. And not just a little bit, turn at least 90 degrees. And then the next tip that we'll do, we'll talk about turning 180 degrees. But turning right then and there. Get that front end moving. Let's just not imagine this at all in the arena. For the next tip, we'll talk about something where you actually are going to need a fence. But let's not talk about a fence or any kind of help. Because even a stop, most everything in riding is involved with forward motion. So even in its own little way, a stop has forward motion in it. And if you talk in dressage is called a halt because it is a halt of all forward motion. So that's when we're talking a stop, we want all 4 feet on the ground, and in dressage we actually want that horse to be ready to go forward again. In reining and in most Western disciplines, we don't. We want that horse to be ready to do whatever we want him to do. So, but let's go back to say we're on the trail. Even on the trail, you can go ahead and turn 90 degrees, and it's not necessarily so much as trying to keep your hind end in place as making that front end move. The more, if your horse is not using his hind end, if you take his front end away, he will start using his hind end. So instead of worrying about what the hind end is doing, forget the hind end. It's going to fix itself. Make that front end move, and that hind end will work. Do you understand that?
Got it.
So that's why I start using the turns, because it's a lot easier for a novice or intermediate rider to make that front end to move. Now, there's problems with that too, but probably not as many problems as making them concentrate on that hind end and then forgetting everything else, forgetting all the correctness. I am a huge believer in making my own horse's body fix its own self. I don't, the less I got to do to make my horse act correctly, the more my horse is going to learn. So if I'm going to use motion to fix the stop.
That sounds like a practical idea to me. That's a great idea, just to help the horse help himself.
Yeah, and I have found that the more I ask my horse to move, the more he comes together, and the more he has muscle and coordination to do the moving that I ask him to do. Basically, practice is perfect. You are going to be on the basketball court, and you're going to learn how to play basketball in the next 30 minutes. Well, that's probably not going to work all that great. But if you are still doing it 30 minutes a day for a month, at the end of the month, you're going to be a lot better. Practice makes perfect for horses, too. The more you build muscle and the more you build coordination, the better your horse is going to be able to do what you ask him to do.
Wow, that's a whole lot of stuff in less than 15 minutes, Julie. I appreciate you coming on, and this is great because the horse I ride, I'm going to be able to have a lot of fun with this because the horse I ride, before I got him in his little life, he was a Western horse that had a very small amount of training in the rodeo sports, so he has some small inkling of how to stop properly, but I don't. So this will be a lot of fun for me to work with it and to use this exercise of using the stop into a turn as something to help us build our skills up a little bit. And tell our listeners where they can find out more about Julie Slater and perhaps contact you if they have questions.
Well, I'm Julie Slater, and I train people using the internet. I do online lessons. I do Skype lessons where you can dial into Skype and have a right there type of lesson. SlaterHorseTraining.com, and that's just the way it's spelled, SLATER horsetraining.com is where you can get a hold of me and find my phone number and all that. And check out the lesson packages that I've got up there. So I hope to see you guys soon. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook, either privately under Julie Slater, and then Slater Horse Training is on Facebook too.
And that's a wrap. To listen to more tips on everything from barn care to websites for horse people, just go to horsetipdaily.com and look for the topics drop-down menu on the left. And don't forget to support our sponsors here on Horse Tip Daily because they make these podcasts possible. Today's podcast has been brought to you through the generous support of the IPHDA Online Horse Show Association and so much more. You can find them online at iphda.com. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.